Welcome back to Cooking for Fun Friendsgiving series thing. And I'm completely throwing all tradition to the wind. We're making a Snowconut Pie because it's freaking adorable and also transferable to Christmas. So Friendsgiving, Thanksgiving, Christmas, coconut. It'll be great. So this is again, coconut-based pie, but it comes out looking all white and snowy, and it's actually mimicking a Frangipan tart. The only prep we have to do on day one is the crust. And the crust is a take on pâte sucrée, which is a French technique, and it is very easy. So it is very Friendsgiving friendly. So we're mixing softened butter and sugar together first, kind of like you're making a cookie dough. We have 1 stick of softened salted butter, and then 50 grams, so 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And this is not traditional, of course, but 25 grams or 1/4 cup of shredded coconut. We're gonna give it a little mix. Easy. And then in goes the flour, and it's a decent amount of flour. And 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. And let's mix this until it's starting to look like a crumbly, sandy texture. And that is exactly how you want it to look before we add the secret ingredient, the anomaly of a pie crust, and that is 1 egg yolk. I'm cracking the white into a separate bowl, and this is because the white is going to be used in the filling later. You know how I feel about separating eggs from their families, which means egg yolks and egg whites. I don't like to do it unless it's absolutely necessary or unless I can immediately use the white after. So reserve this, and then the egg yolk goes right in. Are you ready to see some magic happen? Yeah! Let's make this dough! All right, and when it reaches this texture, which it will, it took us a bit. We had to take about 2 to 3 minutes of mixing, but when it reaches like Play-Doh texture, that means that you want to stop because this does have flour in it. You don't want to overmix the dough. You don't want to make it too tough. You want that shortbread cookie melt in your mouth, coconutty, buttery situation going on. Gently press it together into a dough ball. And that is the easiest tart crust you're ever going to make. And a little bit of saran wrap, just like any pie crust. I'm sure you treat all your pie crusts that way. Pop it in the fridge. Let's say you're making this all in one day. This really only needs a 30-minute rest. We're going to give it overnight. That just helps the gluten develop, everything meld together, makes it a little bit easier to roll out. But yeah, the crust of our Snowconut Pie, all ready to go. And that is, I think, all we have to do for day one. Hell yeah. See you tomorrow for Friendsgiving. And just like that, it is day 2. Our crust is like firm. So we're going to let it sit out for a little bit. It does need to have some give to it. So my suggestion is if you're chilling it for a day or 24 hours, bring it out while you prep the crumble and the filling. We're going to, oh my God. You're on candid camera. Okay. We're gonna work with Walter in between my legs and make the crumble filling first. If you've seen the wedding cake videos, this will be familiar to you. If you've not, what a treat, because this coconut crumble is unlike any crumble topping I've ever had. It eats like a coffee cake crumble, but is a little saltier, a little crisper. And that's because of one very important ingredient, which is rice flour. So I'm using 150 grams of rice flour, which is an ingredient that if you make a lot of sourdough bread, you'll have a lot of it. But if you are like, this is not something I normally have, why should I get this specifically? It makes the crumble topping lighter and have a texture that is a little bit more appealing when you slice into it. It's like definitely crispier, where if you use all-purpose flour, which you can, that is gonna turn out a little bit gummier and a little bit softer. So rice flour if you can. And then in with the rice flour goes granulated sugar. Of course, coconut flakes. These can be either the big flakes or this level of flake, which is the shreds. Just make sure it's unsweetened, or else you'll just have like that artificial, like sweetened coconut flavor that I find kind of hinders coconut desserts. That's my personal preference. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. You do want a heavy amount of salt. This is a salty crumble. Coconut oil, that can either be firm or melted. It's easier to mix though if it's melted. So, okay. and back. And the dog didn't have to move at all. Add the coconut oil and then get into like a shaggy crumble topping. And that took practically 30 seconds. If you're doing this with all-purpose flour, your coconut oil does need to be firm, or else as soon as you put the crumble in and like start baking everything, it'll just disintegrate into the rest of the coconut filling, which we're gonna make right now. So number one request, do it with rice flour if you can. If you must do it with all-purpose flour, your coconut oil must be solid, and then you're gonna be mixing it with your fingers like you would a pie crust or a like biscuit dough, something like that. The filling, I don't know if you remember our egg white from the crust. Our filling is gonna use that egg white and one whole egg, along with almond flour. We're doing a lot of weird flours in this one pie. Coconut flakes, a little bit of all-purpose flour, and granulated sugar. So 57 grams of coconut oil, this time solid. And 57 grams of softened butter. And then in goes the granulated sugar, and we're gonna beat that together first. We have our leftover egg white, one extra egg, almond flour, and shredded coconut. We have a few more things to add, but we're going to mix this first because almond flour absorbs a lot of moisture. Same with the coconut. So we want to get this to a buttercream consistency before adding in the final few things. So it's starting to look like a wonderful coconut cookie dough. That's when we add in a tablespoon and a teaspoon of all-purpose flour, which feels like a pointless amount of flour, but I promise the 18 grams does a lot. It kind of does what cornstarch does in a super stew. It like thickens, brings it all together. And then before I forget, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Baking is not good if you don't salt every single step. Whip this all together. Beautiful. Get all the dough off your little mixer. And we now have the Snow-conut filling, the Snow-conut crumble, and it's looking very white and snowy. So now you understand the name. The pros of having the crust chill overnight is that it's developed a little bit more gluten, so it's going to be easier to roll out in that way. The cons is it's pretty stiff. So if you've chilled it overnight, you're going to need to warm it up a little bit, which is what I'm doing. But if you've only chilled it for 30 minutes, it'll be pretty ready to roll out. Since this is a pâte sucrée and not a proper pie crust, it is a little bit more tender than pie crust that you're used to working with. So I roll it out on the parchment paper that we are going to eventually put into the tart pan. This just makes the transition a little bit easier, and it makes the rolling out a little bit easier. So a little bit of flour goes on top just to prevent stickage. When I say a little, I mean a lot. And what's nice about having the tart pan right here is you can kind of eyeball how much you need. I don't want this crust to be overhanging so that it has a full ridge. You'll see what I mean, but a frangipan kind of bakes so that it makes its own edge. So I want the crust to be a little bit lower than where the frangipan ends up on top. So the edges aren't perfect, but they are about 1 centimeter past the tart pan, which means it is the perfect time to like lift, place it on top, and gently press it in. I really want this to finish with the crumble being like the nice topping, so it looks like this big, snowy, beautiful pie. So what I'm gonna do is actually fold down the edges so the edges slope in. And what that means is that the frangipan, this is my proper diagram of the pie. So just imagine this is the bottom of the pie, these are the sides. But the frangipan's gonna come up to this edge, the crumble's gonna be right on top, and then this will slope down. So the crust is not gonna be the edge, it's gonna be frangipan and then crumble on top. That's because frangipan caramelizes and browns really nicely on the edges. And I think it's just nice to give it that little side crust. So we're gonna press down these sides. Just some fork marks all the way to the bottom of the crust. Normally, if this was a pie crust, those have a tendency to rise because of how they're laminated. So I'd weigh them down with pie beans. Since this is a pâte sucrée, we're just gonna pop it in and par bake it for 20 minutes. I'm par baking it on a sheet pan because even though it is lined with parchment paper, You never want to run the risk of butter melting out, going through the line of your tart pan, going to the bottom of your oven, burning, smoke, chaos. Not on this holiday. Okay, 20 minutes. Oh, okay, it's looking pretty good. You want it to look a little bit more golden than you think. You see how we have browning around the edges and then like just a little bit of browning on the top and bubbling? That's perfect. So now it's just putting in the coconut filling. This is the most satisfying part. This is the reward for all your work. I mean, eating it is also the reward. And I actually push it a little bit over the crust edges because since it will puff up, I want it to feel encouraged to get all the way to the edge. And our crumble goes directly on top. Beautiful. It took about 35 minutes, but we're making the rest of the Friendsgiving recipes today, so we have to wait to slice it. Patience is a virtue, and you don't have to wait. You have to wait like 5 seconds. See that? Okay, so the pie has had now a few hours to settle. This is perfect. This proves that it's a good day ahead pie or a good morning of pie, because when we first took it out of the oven, it looked a little moist in the center. Like the frangipan looked like it was a little underdone, but actually as it settled, everything's become really uniform on top, really crisp. It looks like snow. It reminds me of the holidays. So I think that this is a good pie for when you want to bring something that is not your average pecan pie, pumpkin pie. It does feel like slicing a cookie. And I know exactly what you're going to say. You're going to say, ma'am, that is not a pie. That is a cake. To which I am going to say, it's more like a cookie cake. That is a pie. So deal with it because it's going to be pretty delicious. Normal humans don't have to worry about the perfect bite shot. I do. I got it. Okay, so let's walk through what we have here. Listen up. We have the coconut patsukri crust, golden brown. No soggy bottoms to be seen. We have the coconut, like dense cookie dough middle layer. Very excited about that. And then the crumble that has detached itself, but that is what crumbles do. Okay, one whole bite. That is rich. The slices that I portioned, you probably are gonna want a half of those. But with vanilla ice cream, perfect end to a Friendsgiving meal. Also very snow feeling. Like the crumble on top is like light and fluffy, like freshly piled snow. The middle coconut layer tastes like the coconut dessert that you want. It's like not too artificial. It's got like a little bit of moisture, but it's also got a little bit of fluffiness. And then the crust just holds everything together in like a perfect buttery finish. We're done. I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss all of these episodes. They're all on my channel. Cooking for Fun is taking a holiday vacation, which is crazy because we've been going pretty consistently, but holiday vacation, we will be back in 2026 or sooner if I'm feeling crazy. We'll see. But thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays. Please make all the food.